Chapter 166, Learning Lightning Jutsus. Fujin said, "How long can you guys hold the leaf on your head during the leaf concentration exercise?" Daisuke answered, 23 minutes. Tatsuya said, 28 minutes. Bunko said, 17 minutes. Bunjiro said, 38 minutes. Ryoma said, 26 minutes. Fujin said, "That's very low. No need to practice any ninjutsu for now. Increase that to 1 hour." Tatsuya immediately complained, "But that exercise is so boring." Fujin said, "Not really a choice, Tatsuya." Ryoma complained, "Can't you just teach us any of your jutsus, Fujin?" Fujin looked at him and said harshly, "The reason why I could become strong is that my basics are good. If any of you can't maintain the leaf for an hour, you should give up your dreams of becoming a ninja and drop out of the academy." Fujin's reply shocked them. Fujin was their age. They expected him to be cordial with them and help them like a friend. They never imagined that he'd be stricter than the academy teachers. Before anyone could make another comment to upset Fujin, Daisuke said, "All right, Fujin. We will work on it." Fujin said, "Come back after you guys manage this. Oh, and come around noon. If I'm not at home at that time, then I'm doing a mission. So check after a few days." Daisuke nodded. Fujin returned back home while they left his property. They immediately began complaining. Banjiro said, "This was a waste of time. I admired him so much. I never thought that he would be so arrogant." Ryoma agreed, "Yes. He asked us to quit the academy if we can't do a stupid leaf exercise." Daisuke said, "Though we grew up together, we haven't been very close since we joined the academy. We should be glad that he at least agreed to help us." Bunko added, "I heard that he was able to hold the leaf for over an hour in his second year in the academy. So his advice could be right." Tatsuya sighed and said, "Anyways, we are struggling in the academy. Let's give his method a try. If it works, we will become ninjas. If it doesn't, it won't be much different." They talked for a bit before deciding to follow his instruction. Fujin had anticipated such a reaction when he said those harsh words. But he didn't care. He didn't care about these 5. It didn't matter to him if they graduated or not. He was just seeing how he could instruct any future subordinates properly. If his future subordinates complained as they did, he would just let them go or kill them depending on the situation. He didn't have the time to raise someone who was both lazy and untalented. Fujin left this whole episode behind him and began deciding which jutsu he should start with. He entered the bottom basement and thought, "My clone picked 11 jutsus to learn. However, 3 of them are very inconvenient to use in battle. However, these 3 look like they are preparatory jutsus for Raikage's lightning cloak. I guess Konoha managed to deduce some of the steps to learn it. Not really surprising. But they didn't manage to completely deduce it. Though there is a possibility that they did deduce it but didn't put it in the library. Another 3 jutsus are a series of jutsus. The D and C rank variants will be dropped in the future. Another jutsu has potential but is highly inaccurate. That leaves me with 1 utility jutsu, 1 defensive jutsu, 1 long-range jutsu and 1 mid-range jutsu in addition to the rank B jutsu. Konoha's stock of lightning jutsus is disappointing. Another issue is that there is no lightning instantaneous body jutsu. So long-range escape with this element isn't possible. I'll have to depend on the flicker jutsu. Anyways, I'll start with the series and then move on to the 3 preparatory jutsus. Even though they don't have much use on the battlefield, they might be able to strengthen my body further." Fujin made hand signs and extended his right arm straight. A lightning bolt formed in his palm and shot towards the metal statue and barely missed it. Fujin analyzed, wow, learned in one try? I suppose now that I have learned so many jutsus, I'll have an easier time learning new jutsus. Especially if it's only a D rank jutsu. Anyways, it looks like I will have to perfect the aim of this lightning bolt jutsu. Then I can move on to the lightning blast jutsu. Shouldn't take long. Fujin began practicing. In a few hours, he managed to gain 100% accuracy with the jutsu. The lightning bolt jutsu didn't do much damage. At best, the opponent will suffer minor electric shocks, though it could paralyze the opponent temporarily. Fujin moved on to the lightning blast jutsu. It was a C rank jutsu. It worked the same as the lightning bolt jutsu. The only difference was that instead of one lightning bolt, it would attack the target with a continuous blast of lightning. The jutsu would continue hitting the opponent until the user decided to stop it or doesn't have the chakra to keep it up. Fujin managed to learn and aim it correctly in under a day. However, he realized a crucial issue: though I can aim properly, I can't control the intensity of the shocks perfectly. Only in around 15% of cases, it was as intense as I wanted it to be. Fujin sighed in relief. I'm glad I didn't try those jutsus before realizing this issue. It could have been bad. Sigh, I keep underestimating this world. There is danger even while learning a jutsu. Anyways, this issue shouldn't affect me while learning the lightning beam jutsu. I'll train my control after learning this jutsu. Lightning beam jutsu was a B rank jutsu. This jutsu was just a powered-up version of the lightning blast jutsu. It could fire a beam twice as wide as the lightning blast jutsu. The shocks from this jutsu would be very painful and fatal. Even if someone dodges this jutsu, they could still be attacked if they are within 2 feet of the beam. Due to the high power of the jutsu, small lightning arcs are expelled occasionally from the beam that can hit anyone in the vicinity and cause more damage than the lightning bolt jutsu. 3 days after Fujin began learning the jutsu, Fujin was standing in front of a metal statue. He made the hand signs and aimed his right palm at the statue. Lightning appeared in his palm and a beam was fired at the statue. The lightning beam hit the statue. The statue kept getting hit by the beam for 30 seconds when Fujin finally stopped it. The statue was in a bad shape. The face had melted and couldn't be called a face anymore. Multiple cracks had occurred on the surface of the statue. Fujin smiled, all right. Single target mid-range jutsu learned. Now, I should work on control. Fujin returned to the room where he had endured electric shocks. He opened his scroll and took out a few items. He set up a circuit. The circuit had an 80 kilo-ohm resistor and an ammeter connected with a wire. Another couple of wires were connected to the other end of the ammeter and the resistor. These wires were left open. Fujin grabbed the wires and began generating electricity with his right hand. The current flowed through the circuit and values began appearing on the ammeter. Fujin decided, 2.3 ampere current. Let me try to keep it at 1 ampere for 10 minutes. Then I will try keeping it stable at other amperes. I should also check this with the voltmeter instead of the ammeter to check both readings. The resistance of the resistor doesn't decrease like the human body, but it would still be better to check. Fujin began practicing. His control improved slightly, but not much. The lightning was very unstable. Fujin could easily provide the max power continuously, but controlling it at lower levels was challenging. He kept practicing till he had to go on a mission. His team gathered outside the mission center. Tomatsu went in and accepted a mission. He came out and said, I accepted a mission to the Land of Frost. Apparently, a family heirloom was stolen. They issued a rank B mission to retrieve it. The opponents will be rogue ninjas from Kyomagakure. Fujin, your wind jutsus will be important to counter their lightning release. Fujin nodded. The group made some preparations and left the village. The group traveled across the Land of Fire and the Land of Hot Water to enter the Land of Frost. The journey took a day and a half before they finally reached their destination. Chapter 167, Kaider 164, a chakra metal sword and ice keki I genkai. The Land of Frost didn't have a ninja force. While they did have some in the past, their army was destroyed in the Second and Third Wars by Kyomagakure. Right now, they only had a few ninjas for the protection of the daimyo and the city. All their missions would be issued to Konoha or Kyomo. Tomatsu briefed Fujin on the details of the Land of Frost en route. Tomatsu also warned his group saying, I don't have the exact information, but I heard some rumors about our Umbu squad clashing with some ninjas from the Land of Frost. So keep your guard up in case this mission is a trap. Everyone nodded. They entered the city as soon as they reached it. After going through some formalities, the group was received by an old politician and his bodyguard. Fujin and his group observed their client. He was very old, probably in his 80s. His back seemed to have been bent permanently and he walked with the help of a walking stick. A samurai acted as his bodyguard. The old man introduced himself, I'm Kanda Kunio. I'm happy to see that Konoha sent a strong group for my mission. Tomatsu asked, Kanda? Are you related to the daimyo? Kanda Kunio smiled and said, looks like you are well informed as well. The current daimyo is my nephew. Tomatsu said, can you tell us more about the mission? The mission statement didn't have much information. Kunio nodded and said, for generations, we had a family heirloom passed through our family. It was a sword made from chakra metal. Unfortunately, we had a break-in last week and our sword was stolen. We did some investigation and found that the thief was a rogue ninja who was formerly from Kyomo. His name is Saigo Rikyo. He used to be a Chunin. He became a missing nin 3 years ago. We discovered that he has created an organization and has set up multiple bases in our country. We don't have the ability to track and kill him. As he was speaking, the samurai let down a map on the table. It was a map of the Land of Frost. It had 5 red crosses. Kunio continued, we have discovered that his organization has these 5 hidden bases. But we don't know which one he is hiding in. We also don't know the exact number and strength of his forces. So your mission is only to retrieve the heirloom. There's no need to kill him or his group. Of course, if you kill him and eliminate his group, that would be the best. You can claim his 2.5 million ryo bounty if he is killed. The Konoha ninjas analyzed the information. There was a lot of information that hadn't been confirmed. The mission could be very risky if stronger ninjas were hiding in the hideouts. Tomatsu asked, if such a group is operating in your country, why didn't you issue a higher-ranked mission to eliminate them and resolve the issue forever? Kunio didn't reply for a few seconds. He let out a sign and said, it's complicated. Every time we issue a high-ranked mission to clear such a rogue group, another takes its place. It's a never-ending cycle. My nephew decided that as long as they don't kill anyone, we won't spend money to hunt them down. Unfortunately, I don't have the money to issue a higher-ranked mission without getting funds from him. He took out a small book and placed it on the table and said, I reiterate that your mission is just to retrieve the heirloom. However, if you are able to exterminate the rogue group, I will reward you with this book. This book contains research conducted by the previous generation of our ninjas on how to combine water and wind manipulation into ice manipulation. This info shocked the group. They began staring at the book. Fujin thought, you gotta be kidding me. How does a weak country have such a book, and how did he manage to hold onto it? The old man saw the expressions on the faces of Konoha ninjas and said, I would like to clarify that the research is incomplete. Though we tried a lot, none of our ninjas ever learned Isekeki I Genkai. The group calmed down. It made a lot more sense now. They guessed that the Land of Frost would have multiple copies of this book. Tomatsu said, all right. We will get your heirloom back and investigate the rogue groups as well. Kunio smiled and got up. He said, enjoy your feast. I'll send someone to show you your rooms for the night. He and his samurai bodyguard left. The Konoha group didn't discuss the mission at all. They rested for the night and left the city early in the morning before the sun had risen. After they were a sufficient distance from the city, Ryota asked, what are your thoughts on the mission? Fujin answered first, it is very tricky. We don't know how many are in his organization. We can't even be sure that he is the leader. If he is just a lackey instead of a leader, then this mission will be very difficult. Tomatsu nodded and said, you are right. It will be a rank A or even S in that case. Considering the risk involved, focus on your safety first. The mission comes after the safety of our group. So don't be impulsive. Especially you, Tadashi. Tadashi's ninja dog, Kenta, barked in agreement. Tadashi replied, hey, I have enough control over myself. The group ignored him and continued forward. They reached the first hideout. It was a small hill with multiple caves in it. Tadashi said, I don't smell anyone inside the hill. I do smell some scents, but they aren't fresh. Katsumi said, I will send my bugs in to check. He sent a few bugs to investigate the hill. The remaining group stayed a considerable distance away. After some time, even the bugs returned empty-handed. Tomatsu looked at Fujin. Fujin spread his chakra field and shook his head, I don't sense anyone. Tomatsu said, all right, let's check the next hideout. The group checked the nearest hideout but didn't find anyone once again. So they moved to the third location. There was a huge waterfall at this location. Apart from the river and some sparse trees around it, the area was open. Ryota asked, where is the hideout here? Tadashi said, I don't smell anyone. Kenta barked in agreement. Fujin asked, should I try to sense right away? Tomatsu said, no, let Katsumi check the area first. Fujin nodded. Katsumi's bugs scouted the location but didn't find anything either. Fujin spread his chakra field. He didn't pick up any chakra either. But he felt something weird. He looked at the waterfall. Chakra gathered in his eyes as he focused on it. He said, there is a cave at the bottom of the waterfall. But the entrance is blocked with a wall of rocks which look natural. Tomatsu asked, do you sense someone hiding there? Fujin answered, no, but I have a weird feeling. As if my chakra field can't enter deep into the cave. And as if something is trying to hide from my eyes. Ryota asked, what do you mean? Fujin said, during my last mission with Renjiro-sensei, we encountered a squad from Kiri who hid underground perfectly using Fuinjutsu. I have a feeling that the same might be the case here. As he said that, Fujin thought, well, I can't tell that I live in a house that is filled with seals, can I? It has helped in getting familiar with how seals feel when I try to sense them. Hearing Fujin, Everyone frowned. Tomatsu said, Fuinjutsu. That's troublesome. Even more troublesome is the fact that they have someone who could be a seal master. He looked at Fujin and asked, are you 100% sure that this place is guarded by Fuinjutsu? Fujin shook his head. Despite his familiarity with the seals, he still couldn't guarantee. Tomatsu asked, is there any way we could enter undetected? Fujin replied, unless we have a much superior seal master, nope. Tomatsu asked, what would you recommend? Fujin said, the best way would be to destroy the cave behind the waterfall. That way, most of them will die inside. We can stay far away and observe who stays alive and comes out. We can decide whether to attack or escape then. Fujin looked at Ryota and asked, do you have any earth jutsu that could make the entire waterfall collapse? Ryota said with a deadpan expression, of course not. Tomatsu said, none of us has any jutsu. Fujin, if we enter the cave, would we be ambushed? Fujin said, likely not. The initial part of the cave seems clear. They are probably hiding inside. Though I'm not 100% sure. Tomatsu said, all right. Let's enter the cave then. We will see if there is any way to infiltrate deeper stealthily. If not, we will blow up the whole place with explosives. The group grinned at that idea. The group entered the waterfall. Fujin pointed at one spot and Ryota used a jutsu to create a path. Katsumi first checked the insides with his bugs and the group stepped in when they confirmed that there were no traps. Chapter 168, Safe Hideout. What's that? The Konoha ninjas entered the cave silently and checked it out. There was nothing in the cave. Fujin stood in front of a wall and focused chakra in his eyes. He wouldn't have noticed it a few months back, but due to practicing Fuinjutsu so much, he could see some seals in the wall. He smirked and thought, at best the one who made these is a seal master and not a grandmaster. It'd have been difficult to explain how I knew it was a grandmaster and convince these guys to retreat had that been the case. Still, this is a great hideout. For starters, there was nothing around the place that would cause suspicion. This cave itself has 2 layers of camouflage. The waterfall and the wall, one of which is natural and the other is indistinguishable from the natural wall. Even if someone still managed to find this cave, they would think that it is only a small cave and wouldn't suspect a bigger cave inside. Perhaps the only vulnerability of this hideout is the ones hiding inside it. If they didn't leave any trail, it'd be almost impossible for the Land of Frost forces to find this place suspicious. Fujin said, I think they are behind this wall. Tomatsu nodded. The whole group planted a few dozen explosives on that wall. Fujin and Ryota used Earth military movement jutsu to enter the cave walls and planted over 400 explosion tags where Fujin asked them to. As Fujin could see the seals, the rogue ninjas who were hiding inside weren't alerted. Fujin's squad left the waterfall and moved a few hundred meters away. Tomatsu asked, is everyone ready? The group nodded. Everyone made a hand sign. Tomatsu picked up a stone and said, we will set off the explosion when the stone touches the ground. He tossed the stone in the air. At the moment it touched the ground, all 5 ninjas activated the explosion tags they planted. Inside the cave, there were 14 rogue ninjas. They were aware that the Land of Frost would try to find them, perhaps even issue a mission, but they weren't worried. They had recently stocked up their supplies and were planning to hide there for a month or more. In the cave, Nishio Koranaga was trying out the chakra sword. He held the sword in his right hand and tried to extend his chakra through the sword. The chakra flowed through the sword very smoothly. He felt as if the sword was an extension of his own arm. Suddenly, the chakra flowing through the sword was converted into lightning in the blink of an eye. Almost all of the other rogue ninjas were watching this. They were surprised at how skilled Koranaga was. Saigo Rikyo said, "Damn boss. You are on fire. It's as if the sword was crafted for you." However, Koranaga shook his head and said, "No, you have done a great job. This sword is amazing. I am surprised that this weak little nation had something so good." Rikyo grinned and said, "It was their family heirloom. They might still have some good stuff that we can try to steal." Koranaga nodded and said, "Yes. I'm interested too. But not now. They might have issued a rank mission to Konoha or our former village to hunt you down." Rikyu immediately got serious and said, "Yes. They must be hunting for me now." Koranaga smirked and said, "Don't worry. As long as you are loyal to me, I will guarantee your safety. Besides, those morons don't know about me. Even if they manage to track this hideout, they will just feed my new sword." Hearing him, everyone calmed down and began cheering. After all, Koranaga was the true leader of this group of misfits. The investigation carried out by the Land of Frost ninjas never discovered him. So their information was incomplete. And this incomplete information could very well be fatal. As the rogue ninjas were celebrating, the explosion tags began exploding. The entire hidden cave began shaking. They didn't understand what exactly was happening. One of them yelled, "What the fuck is happening? Did an earthquake hit us?" Another one of the ninjas had his eyes closed as he sensed. His name was Fumiko Mokwamai. He was a rogue ninja from the Land of Water and was a seal master. He said, "Someone has planted hundreds of explosions around our cave. Take cover immediately." Everyone began using defensive jutsus. However, the number of explosions was too high. The cave soon crumbled. Rocks rained down upon them. The ground under them began collapsing. Explosion tags began exploding very close to them. All the large-scale defensive jutsus were torn down, leaving every man for himself. The explosions also disabled all seals. The Konoha ninjas could now use their senses to observe the ones hiding inside. Fujin was the first one to speak. His voice was very serious as he said, "There is a jounin among them. Their total number is 14. Everyone is at least a chinin." The entire group became very serious. A jounin from Kyumo along with 13 chinins would be very difficult to handle. Tomatsu said, "Let's pay attention from a distance and see how many survive. I will decide whether to attack or retreat." He looked at Katsumi, who nodded his head. The explosions broke all the cave walls. Water from the waterfall began pouring into it and submerging the entire cave. The rogue ninjas who were struggling with explosions, debris and unstable footing suddenly had to deal with a strong water wave as well. Koranaga grabbed Rikyu and began making his way out of the cave through the water. Mokwamai created a barrier around himself and began making his way out as well. In all, the explosions killed 3. Another 5 were killed when rocks fell on them. And 1 more was killed due to suffocating underwater. The 5 who made it out had some injuries on them. Only Mokwamai and Koranaga were completely fine. They expected to be ambushed as soon as they got out. However, there was no attack, instead there was another trap for them. Katsumi had some of his bugs move along the water that flooded the cave. These bugs could survive underwater and were very poisonous. They managed to bite all except Mokwamai, who was protected by a barrier. As soon as they landed outside the waterfall, their legs began shaking. Koranaga said, "Fuck. I'm poisoned." He looked around to see 3 more being in the same situation as he was. He looked at Mokwamai, who wasn't even a bit hurt, and yelled, "Bastard! Did you betray us?" Mokwamai quickly defended himself, "I have done no such thing." Koranaga didn't trust him and said, "First we were attacked despite your seals. And now all but you are poisoned. How would you explain that?" Koranaga unsheathed his chakra sword as he spoke. However, he didn't attack and instead kept his attention on an incoming ambush. Seeing that they wouldn't clash, the Konoha ninjas made a move. Tomatsu said, "I will take on the Jounin. Ryota, take on the unharmed guy. Others finish off the rest and come to help us." The group nodded and flickered. The rogue ninjas noticed them and prepared for a fight. Mokwamai said, "They are Konoha ninjas. Perhaps you 4 were poisoned by bugs." "They couldn't poison me due to my barrier." Koranaga snorted and focused on the Konoha ninjas. The Konoha group flickered until they were just 20 meters from the enemy. Fujin was at the center, Tomatsu and Tadashi were on both his sides and both had made hand signs. Fire release, Great Fireball Jutsu. At the same time, Fujin used Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. The 3 jutsus combined, creating a massive firestorm. While their missions over the last couple of months weren't challenging, Fujin did improve his teamwork alongside the group a lot. The rogue ninjas were surprised by the huge firestorm heading for them. Koranaga yelled, "Get underwater." The rogue ninjas immediately dove into the river they were standing on. Ryota, Tadashi, and Tomatsu followed them underwater. Katsumi didn't join them as most of his bugs were ineffective underwater. While Fujin didn't go as he didn't want to face an experienced lightning user underwater. Under the water, Koranaga saw the Konoha ninjas following him. He immediately became angry, "They dare to fight me underwater." He made hand signs. Lightning release, false darkness. He released a spear of lightning from his mouth at Tomatsu. Tomatsu watched the incoming lightning spear with a grim expression as he thought, "I didn't expect him to use such a strong jutsu despite being poisoned." He threw a kunao with an explosion tag at the incoming spear. It exploded right before reaching the spear. The explosion dispersed the spear. However, since they were underwater, the current began spreading through the entire area. The Konoha ninjas as well as the rogues were electrocuted. Among the rogues, 3 had an affinity to the lightning element. They were fine. While Mokwamai once again insulated himself with the help of seals. Only 1 rogue was shocked. On the side of the Konoha ninjas, all the 3 who went underwater and the dog were shocked. Though it didn't injure them, the shock had a paralytic effect on them and hindered their movement. They immediately began exiting the water. Their advantage had been reversed with a single jutsu. Chapter 169, The Hunt Begins. The immediate reversal lifted the spirits of the rogue ninjas. They began making hand signs to use more lightning jutsus. However, Koranaga was frowning, "My entire body is hurting. This poison is very troublesome. We will need to win this fight or escape successfully within 5 minutes. Otherwise, we all might die here." While the rogue ninjas were making hand signs, someone watched them like a hawk. Fujin's eyes were glowing as he watched the only rogue ninja who got shocked. Vacuum cores began forming in his mouth. He shot 2 vacuum bullets at the same time. During the last 2 months of training, Fujin had finally learned to use 2 vacuum bullets at the same time. One vacuum bullet was shot at Koranaga while the other was shot at the paralyzed rogue. Koranaga noticed the attack and immediately moved out of the way while weaving hand signs. However, there was another ninja just behind him who didn't notice the attack. The bullet hit his right thigh and pierced through it. As for the paralyzed rogue, the vacuum bullet pierced through his head and killed him. The deadly attack shocked them once again and reminded them of the seriousness of the situation. Koranaga launched false darkness once again. This time it was aimed at Fujin. Fujin noticed it and used vacuum bullet jutsu once again and shot 2 bullets at the incoming lightning spear. His bullets tore through the lightning spear and dispersed it. Koranaga had to dodge them once again. He frowned. Wind user. Things just keep getting worse. Tomatsu, Tadashi, Ryota, and Kenta exited the water. Katsumi helped them to get on the shore. All breathed heavily. Tadashi gritted his teeth and complained, "Shit. That bastard is strong." Ryota agreed, "Yeah. And the lightning element restricts me too much." Luckily Tomatsu at least neutralized it. Otherwise, we might have been in a lot of trouble. Tomatsu said, "Though our movement will be hindered a bit, they are poisoned by Katsumi's bugs. We just have to hold on for around 5 minutes and they will begin losing their ability to move." Katsumi nodded and said, "4 more minutes left. It will be best if they escape. That way we can just hunt down their unconscious or dead bodies." Fujin noticed that all his team were on the shore. The rogue ninjas who were under the water were approaching him. And the seal master from the group was weaving hand signs for a water jutsu. Not wanting to be surrounded, he flickered to his team. When he reached them, he heard Katsumi softly whispering, "Focus on stalling them. It's fine if they escape." A second after he flickered, a water dragon formed where he was standing. The rogue group exited the river and stood behind the water dragon. As soon as they exited the river, Katsumi's bugs attacked them. His bugs had already spread over the river and swarmed them. The rogues had noticed the bugs when they were underwater. They immediately launched explosion tags on them. Mokwamai launched his water dragon at the Konoha ninjas. However, Fujin countered with a giant ball of wind. It hit the water dragon's head and exploded, neutralizing it. Fujin followed it up with a dozen air bullets. However, the enemy managed to dodge. The Konoha ninjas who were electrocuted earlier stood up on their feet. However, their movement wasn't very fluent. Koranaga observed their movements. He analyzed, "We could attack and try to kill them, but the wind user will be tough to overcome. He can keep neutralizing our jutsus and keep us at a distance. Every second that he stalls will be lethal for us. While that bug user is probably responsible for our poison. His bugs are an even bigger threat than the wind user. We should escape while their mobility is hampered." "No, I should." Without saying anything, Koranaga suddenly flickered away. Mokwamai had expected him to do this and flickered away as well. The other two were shocked. However, within a second, they tried escaping as well. Fujin was surprised at how they suddenly ran away. He thought, "Wow. That leader just abandoned them and ran." He made a hand sign. A shadow clone with 10% of his chakra appeared. He flickered immediately. Just 2 flickers and he appeared behind the rogue who was running away on 1 foot. The rogue ninja noticed him and threw a few shurikens at him and began weaving hand signs. However, the clone dodged all shurikens with extreme ease. A sword appeared in his hand and he swung the sword at the enemy. Realizing the threat, the rogue ninja moved backwards. However, a sword slash was released from the sword. The clone watched as the enemy's head was split from his neck. While the clone was fighting, Fujin created another shadow clone and 10 wind clones which chased after the remaining 3. After finishing off his opponent, the first clone also joined the chase. Tomatsu looked at it and said, "Good work." Fujin nodded and asked Katsumi, "Did you plant your bugs on them?" Katsumi nodded and said, "All except the guy who used the water jutsu. They are poisoned as well." Fujin and Katsumi stayed on guard while the others warmed up to get rid of any issues they might have in moving around. After a couple of minutes, they began chasing. Fujin said, "The one who was injured is dead. The others are escaping in different directions." Tomatsu looked at Katsumi, who told them the exact locations. He instructed, "All right. Fujin and Tadashi will hunt Saigo Rikyo. The rest of us will hunt that Jounin. Ignore the third ninja for now." Everyone nodded and split off. Fujin analyzed, "Good decision. The main mission is to retrieve the sword, while the additional rewards are basically for bringing Rikyo's head. And with the enemy poisoned, they just need to wait until that Jounin to just die by himself." Koranaga and Rikyo quickly began consuming the antidotes they had. They had a general use antidote that could neutralize the poisons of the bugs from the Abarame clan. Their situation improved slightly. The pain and dizziness they were experiencing began decreasing. Both smiled. The speed of Fujin's clones was much faster than theirs. His clones began catching up with the enemies. The wind clones chasing Rikyo were the first ones to catch up. Rikyo turned around to see 3 wind clones chasing him. He thought, "Wind clones. So annoying." He began weaving hand signs while escaping. The wind clones knew that they wouldn't be able to defeat him, so they only focused on stalling him. Rikyo turned around and used the jutsu he prepared. Lightning release, discharge jutsu. He extended his palms ahead. Lightning appeared on his palms and was launched towards the clone. However, instead of it moving at a rapid speed, it moved slowly and instead spread in all directions. The eyes of the clones widened as they retreated. They thought, "A low damage AoE jutsu. It's perfect for dealing with clones." As the lightning discharged approached the clones, one of the clones stepped forward and poured all his chakra into a great breakthrough jutsu. The winds neutralized all the discharge and instead attacked Rikyo. However, after using the jutsu, Rikyo had already started running. The remaining 2 clones began chasing after him. Mokwamai was the next one to clash with the clones. Unlike Rikyo, he waited on top of a small lake for the clones to catch up. As soon as the clones appeared in sight, he began making hand signs. He thought, "I could have hidden perfectly. Unfortunately, this kid is a sensor. He would have figured out the general area and I would be trapped. I have to finish the clones before the ninjas begin sensing me as well." 1 shadow clone and 3 wind clones approached him and noticed him weaving hand signs. Water release, raging waves. Mokwamai spat out water in all directions. Just like Rikyo, his aim too was to use a wide-range attack to dispel the clones. One of the wind clones again moved forward and used all his chakra to use an infinite breakthrough jutsu to nullify the enemy jutsu. The wind clashed with the water and sent the water back to Mokwamai. The remaining clones flickered to close the distance while preparing a jutsu. Wind release, air bullet jutsu. All 3 clones used air bullet jutsu at the same time. The shadow clone aimed his bullets at Mokwamai, while the wind clones cut off his escape routes. However, Mokwamai stood his ground. A barrier appeared around him. The air bullets hit the barrier and were stopped. The shadow clone observed him carefully. He analyzed, "Impressive. His speed at creating barriers is very fast. I should study barriers properly. They provide a very strong defense." That said, he is lucky that I can't use vacuum jutsus with a clone yet. Else he might have died despite the barrier. Behind the barrier, Mokwamai was rapidly weaving hand signs. His chakras suddenly flared. The winds from the infinite breakthrough jutsu had died down. Water once again began gathering around him. Water release, piercing rain jutsu. The water formed a sphere around him. The surface of the water sphere began forming spikes. Soon, innumerable water needles were shot in all directions at a high speed. Chapter 170, A False Sense of Security. The wind clones tried dodging the incoming water needles, but there was no room as they were too densely packed. The shadow clone escaped underground. Mokwamai weaved more hand signs and slammed his hands on the lake. Water release, corrosive liquid jutsu. The water from the lake began spreading above the ground for hundreds of meters. This water was corrosive and harmful. If it came in contact with a ninja, it would begin feeling an itch over their body. However, if it hit a clone, the clone would be dispelled. Mokwamai observed as he thought, though we made this jutsu to counter the ninjas who hide underwater, it also works for those who hide underground. Now that clone will be trapped there. He began planning his escape. Meanwhile, Fujin's clone frowned. He thought, what a troublesome opponent. He managed to neutralize my clones very easily. Still, all his fighting plans are based on the assumption that I don't know lightning jutsus. A strong current through the water will reverse the battle situation. Unfortunately, I have to keep it hidden. The clone made a hand sign. A wind clone appeared behind it containing half his chakra. The remaining half of his chakra gathered on the clone's fist. He punched the ground above him diagonally. A shock wave was sent through the ground. It hit the underwater walls of the lake and sent stones flying at Mokwamai, who had just relaxed his guard slightly. Around 4 to 5 stones hit him. Unfortunately, the speed of the stones wasn't fast enough to make them lethal. Their speed was further reduced by the water. Though the stones barely hurt him, his instincts were screaming. He quickly made a barrier in the direction from where the stones came. The shadow clone's punch had created a small but linear hole. The wind clone used infinite breakthrough jutsu and poured all its chakra into it. However, unlike the usual infinite breakthrough jutsu that spread for dozens, even hundreds of meters wide, this one traveled in a narrow hole. It almost looked like a wind spear. The wind jutsu hit the barrier hard. As the impact was only on a small area, the entire barrier was pushed back. Mokwamai controlled the barrier and made it turn slightly to divert the direction of the jutsu. However, the wind spear pierced through the barrier. Fortunately, he managed to change the direction slightly. The spear passed through the side of his abdomen, cutting a half-inch semicircle through his right side. Mokwamai watched in shock as the left side of his abdomen began bleeding profusely. He thought, who the fuck is that kid? And which jutsus did he use to do something like this? However, he stopped thinking about Fujin and began thinking about his own vulnerable situation. They have an Inyazuka. He will smell my blood. Hiding has become 100 times more difficult now. He removed all his clothes as they all had some blood on them. He used the water to clean the wound. Once the wound was cleaned, he lit a fire and burned the wound to stop the bleeding. He gritted his teeth due to the pain. The fire cauterized the wound and stopped bleeding. He applied some bandages over the burned area and made a hand sign. 4 water clones appeared around him. Each of them picked up some of the bloody clothes and ran in different directions. Mokwamai ran in another direction without bothering to wear any clothes. He ensured that he left no trail behind. After moving some distance, he hid underground and used seals to hide properly. The last set of clones clashed with Korenaga, but they were defeated promptly. Fujin, who was chasing Rikyo, received the memories of his two shadow clones. He analyzed, these guys are tough. I don't think this mission is rank B anymore. Rikyo also managed to dispel the last two wind clones. They were escaping with confidence when something happened. Both Rikyo and Korenaga suddenly lost their footing. They fell to the ground and vomited blood. Both were shocked. What the heck? What happened? Did I get poisoned again? How? Both were confused. They didn't understand. Other than Katsumi, the remaining Konoha ninjas were also in the dark about this. They were aware that the rogue ninjas were poisoned. However, they never saw the rogue ninjas use antidotes. The sudden flaring of the poison in Rikyu and Korenaga was a hidden strategy of the Abarame clan. The entire clan used the same bug to poison the enemies. Hence, every major village had ready-made antidotes available for that poison. However, in reality, the Abarame clan had a large variety of poisonous bugs. One of those bugs had poison similar to the normal poisonous bugs. However, instead of being neutralized by the antidote, it would be temporarily suppressed and flare up a few minutes later. The Abarame clan keeps this a secret by only using it against enemies when they are confident that they will kill the enemies. Otherwise, they wouldn't use it. Due to this reason, no one was aware of this. And due to this reason, the Abarame clan would always be considered a clan that Konoha's enemies hated to fight during wars. Rikyu and Korenaga stopped escaping and tried to inspect themselves. They both speculated that they were poisoned with a different poison. So their antidote wasn't effective. However, even after speculating correctly, they couldn't do anything about it. Rikyu decided to stop escaping and hid behind a tree as it was very difficult for him to move. On the other hand, Korenaga turned around and rushed back to where the Konoha ninjas were. Around half a minute later, Korenaga encountered Tomatsu, Katsumi, and Ryota. A vicious look could be seen in his eyes as he looked at Katsumi. He threatened, "Give me the antidote for your poison. If not, I will kill you all." Tomatsu chuckled and asked, "Do you really think that we would just hand you the antidote?" However, he and Ryota were on alert. They had the same thought, why did he escape if he didn't have the antidote? Did he set up any trap here? Unlike them, Katsumi wasn't that worried. They began fighting. Fujin and Tadashi caught up with Rikyu as well. His blood was very easy to smell for Rikyu, while Fujin could sense him when they entered in range. They stealthily approached him from behind. They could hear him coughing. Tadashi grabbed a shuriken that had a string attached to it. He threw it around the tree from behind. It went around the tree and trapped Rikyu. Though Rikyu had stopped moving, his condition worsened. He vomited blood multiple times. Even moving had become difficult. Tears had formed in his eyes as he realized that he would die in that unknown place. He saw the shuriken and the string. But it was too late. He didn't have any energy to move. The string tied him to the tree. He tried struggling, however, 2 vacuum bullets hit him. One pierced his heart and the other pierced his neck. He died without troubling Fujin and Tadashi much. Tadashi said, "That was easy." Fujin nodded, "Yeah. Katsumi's poison is very strong." Tadashi grinned and said, "Yeah, it is. He bailed us out multiple times thanks to it." He went forward and stored Rikyu's body in a scroll. They began moving towards Tomatsu and company. Tadashi asked, Any idea what's happening at other places? Fujin shook his head and said, no. They are both strong. They managed to defeat my clones. I think my clones managed to injure that water user, but I'm not sure. Tadashi replied, all right. Anyways, that Jounin is also poisoned. So Tomatsu and others should be able to win easily. Fujin nodded. They moved quickly and arrived where Koranaga was fighting in a few minutes. The scene surprised them. Tadashi quickly rushed towards Tomatsu and Katsumi and asked, are you guys fine? Fujin also followed him. Both were bleeding. Katsumi's left leg was dyed in blood. Tomatsu's right arm also seemed to be bleeding in multiple spots. Korinaga's dead body was lying a few meters away from them. Tomatsu said, it's fine. He was stronger than we expected. And the poison made him very desperate. They began applying first aid to them. Katsumi's left leg had multiple nails embedded in it. Koranaga had charged the nails with lightning and used them to attack from range as Katsumi always maintained a distance from him. Meanwhile, since Koranaga was targeting Katsumi, Tomatsu decided to engage him at close range. That resulted in 2 long and deep slashes on his right arm with the chakra sword. While applying first aid, Ryota said, this guy was very strong. Especially with the chakra sword. It's lucky that he was poisoned, else we might have been in severe trouble. Tomatsu agreed, yeah, I thought I could take on him. Unfortunately, he was stronger. While the first aid was being applied, a few of Katsumi's bugs were moving inside Korinaga's dead body. They were cleaning all traces of the poison in his body. Due to this, if anyone inspects his dead body, no one would find the poison that was used. Hence, they won't be able to make the antidote. All Abarame clan ninjas who used this poison would use this method to keep their poisons a secret. If they weren't sure about the kill and the fact that they would get access to their dead bodies first, they would only use the normal poison.